Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. It is a Wednesday edition of the show. We are in prime time. As we talked about this week, Pewter Report Scott Reynolds is on vacation in Colorado. So we're bringing in a slew of guests day by day, and I am very excited to have joining me on the show today from WDAE. The only thing larger than his good-willed personality is his biceps. By order of the Peaky Blobners from WDAE, the J&Z show, it is Zac Blobner. Zac, thank you so much for joining the show today. How you doing, my man?
I feel like I got to step up my intro game for when we have you on our show, because you just outdid any intro I've ever done for you, for myself. Here tonight, man. But happy to be on with you. Always happy to chop it up on the Bucs, but specifically, we have a lot of good conversations, so I'm excited to kind of get into a lot tonight, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're going to be kind enough to give us some of your time on tonight's show, I got to make sure I bring it. I got to make sure I, present the host or the co-host in this situation in the best way possible. So I thought you'd appreciate that. You had a great Kentucky Derby outfit a couple weeks ago with, I believe it was Peaky Blinders themed. So I want to give a quick shout out to that. Zac, before we start talking about the Bucs, and there's a lot to get into for sure, whether it's the offseason that's already been had or what's to come with OTAs around the corner and, of course, training camp. Just wanted to ask you a little bit about the J&Z show. I don't even think it's been a full year yet, but for you, I know how much you've grinded from producing the Ronnie and T-Crash show, hosting various shows on Saturday and Saturday mornings. How's it been for you personally working with Jay and seeing the growth of the J&Z show?
It's been a lot of fun. Yeah, it hasn't been a year. We started roughly late October, so we've still got a few months, quite a bit actually, football season as well, basically, before we get to a full year. But it's been a lot of fun. One of the things that I've always appreciated about Jay, even though we never worked super directly together, is how similarly we both do grind and go out there and try to, be at the events and at games and at all the things around town. And I just think that that's an area where we're going to benefit on air a lot. As you know, it's just different being able to, go to some of the practices and be around the team in a different capacity outside of just watching them on game day. It just gives you more of a well-rounded idea of the behind the scenes stuff and why players' personalities are a certain way. So I think that's the thing when it comes to J&Z that is a little bit more unique. And obviously he has a great relationship with the Lightning. I have a great relationship with the Rays. We both have good relationships with the other two franchises as well. So I think for us, our big focus is really just being a well-rounded show where, it is very sports centric, and we're able to kind of take our listeners and people a little bit more behind the scenes, and we think out our points and our subjects a little bit more. And that's kind of the show that we want to put out there, man. So it's been really good. I think that we still are growing in a lot of ways. And, we haven't had a full season at all. We'll have our first full baseball season, but even football, we started midway. So I think when it comes to training camp specifically, and then once, Sundays are back for Bucs fans, it'll give Jay and I a fresh kind of jump start on the football season too.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of the show, whether I'm on it or not. I'm listening to it all the time, and I definitely appreciate how you guys kind of mix things up. I mean, we've heard the quintessential radio station, radio voices and opinions year in and year out. So I definitely think you guys bring something different to the table. Now, you've been with WDAE for a couple of years now. I'm just curious overall if you have a favorite or standout moment, maybe particularly with the Bucs, since this is the Pewter Report podcast and we're covering the Bucs. Anything to you that really sticks out?
Man, we had this moment with, there's obviously a bunch of things. I could always point to the winning, the championship, stuff like that. A moment that I really thought was going to be a bigger moment than it was, I thought it would go a little viral. We had Steve McClendon on after his season in Tampa Bay. He was a defensive tackle, came over from the Jets, if you remember.
Yes.
And we asked Steve McClendon, we were like, hey, is there any cool Tom Brady story you have after going through the gauntlet of questions? And the answer that he gave us was Tom Brady eats donuts. And we kind of just went into that a little bit. And I just was shocked by it. That was something that I just didn't expect to be said out loud or a thing, and we thought it was going to go viral. It did not go viral. It basically just died in the doldrums of our audio archive. But yeah, that was something that like it's one you know, and that's the funny thing in social media in our world today is like you might think you have some really cool content or a cool story or a cool tidbit, and it'll fall flat. Then you'll have like a throwaway comment or something, and it'll go crazy. So that's one of the things that sticks out to me in terms of just that was the first one that popped into my head. We don't talk about it a whole lot because it wasn't a popular conversation. And then being at the boat parade for the Bucs and being able to be at the the celebration afterwards and experience that. And there's a lot of stories there. The one that I think sticks with me the most was Will Golston handing me a bottle of tequila and telling me to go bottoms to tops with it. And I took like a baby sip. And I like bourbon. I will drink other alcohols. Like I don't say no, but I don't, tequila is the one that it's dangerous. I'm like, get it away from me. I don't trust it. So I took a little baby sip and Golston was like, no, I said, take a swig, like as if I was some clown. And so I had to take a full swig, and I'm glad that he made me do it. I'm glad that it happened. I felt, even though I covered the team and I was around a bunch of stuff and I was on the Pewter report, or not Pewter report boat. I was on the boat with a bunch of other media members, and Mark Cook, God rest his soul, was on that boat with me too. And just like that day overall, and I spent a lot of time talking to Mark on the ride over and stuff like that. But Will Golston at the very end of it, and then I got on one of the buses. I didn't even know where it was going. I was with a bunch of like the employees, and it took me back to the parking lot. And I was like, thank God, because it would have been so hard to get an Uber from where we were at. So those two things kind of stick out to me the most, and just in terms of the interactions that I've had with some Bucs stuff.
Yeah, they do say tequila is to kill you, but Will Golston, is the man, and he's obviously great with the media. Yeah. He's great with the fans and everything. So when Will does that, you have to oblige. I actually remember you telling me that because I wasn't on the boat with you guys, but I went directly to where like the stage was and where everyone docked at there. And I remember, there's a sea of people. There's so many people. And it was somewhere in between Bruce being like, F that, we're going for two. And then Vita Vea dunking the water on Bruce Arians, where we ended up like right next to each other. We was like, oh, like, what's up, man? And I remember you saying that Will Golston story. But it's so funny what you mentioned before about sometimes you think you have something great, it's going to go viral and other stations are going to pick it up and things like that. And then the most random of things gets posted and it blows up. I remember the other day at Bucs rookie minicamp, I posted a picture of Yaya Diaby, the Bucs round pick, the edge rusher. I really just posted the picture just being like, oh, here's Yaya. This is his number and everything like that. And everyone was like, oh my God, he's built like a tank. He's gigantic, like all of this stuff. So it is so funny and true what you mentioned. One last question about WDAE before we kind of go further into the Bucs. Just wondering if there is any interview that you had or preparing going into that like you were legit either nervous about or one where you didn't maybe have too many expectations going in and you went away going, man, that was awesome. That was amazing. I know you just mentioned Steve McClendon. Shout out to when he had the interception against the Giants. But just wondering, anyone, doesn't have to be the Bucs specifically, but just in your interviewing experience.
Yeah, I think, I can say the most intimidated I've ever been in terms, and I think being in the business, you kind of numb yourself to that intimidation, to talking to different athletes and people in sports. Certainly the first time we got the opportunity to talk to Tom Brady face to face, I'll be honest, like that was a lot. Like I just remember feeling like I felt like a kid at Florida again, just trying to like talk to athletes for the first time. I was terrified. That one will always kind of stick out to me because I don't know if I'll ever be in that situation again where I feel that intimidation. He's just a different, obviously, athlete. In terms of like interviews we've done and stuff, I remember the first time we had Dick Vitale on in the mornings. And I mean, like grew up loving him. Like he's a legend, right? In every way, shape, and form. And for me, we were having him on. I was so nervous to bring him in. And I could not get his phone connection to be like a good one. So he was starting behind the scenes. He's like, I've never had this problem with phones before. And like, basically it was like blaming it all on me. And I know it's technology. We can't control it, but I'm just like, yeah, I'm sorry, man. Like I'm super apologetic. And I remember putting him on, and he started the interview with like, I don't know what's going on with that producer back there. Now, he's joined DAE so many times since. He's always been nice to me since. But that first time, I just remember getting like through that interview and being like, great, one of my heroes, Dick Vitale, like hates me. Like I got to live with this now. And fortunately, that wasn't the case. But yeah, the phones did not work in my favor that day.
That is unbelievable. I'm not even trying to. I know Dickie V says awesome, but I feel like before he said unbelievable, But yeah, that is crazy. Like, very difficult to get on Dickie V's bad side. And again, out of your control, but that is an awesome story. I appreciate you sharing that with us. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Buccaneers. There's been so much that's went on with this offseason already and a lot more to come, especially around the corner with, Bucs mini camp starting and eventually training camp coming late in the summer. So I thought this was a good time, and I'm glad that I have you on for this. This is a good time to just kind of set the table where it is, because like I said, so much craziness and then a lot more to come already. This is a nice, I wouldn't even call it a halfway point, but just a nice, like, brief intermission if you're watching a Broadway play. It's a nice little intermission before Act 2 starts picking up before the regular season. But it really kicked off after Tom Brady's retirement for the second time, and as we know now, it was legit. There's no comeback coming this year. Maybe we'll see him in the NFL owning the Las Vegas Raiders. That might be what's coming up next. But really, I think the biggest thing that happened to the Bucs early on when free agency started, and Jason Light had talked about, we got to find value and we got to find speed. And I think it was so surprising, the re-signings that the Bucs made early on with Levante David, who, I mean, what else can we really say about Levante? A leader of this team, a future Bucs Ring of Honor member, should be a Hall of Famer, but never gets the praise that he deserves. And of course, Jamel Dean, don't make a scene. Both of these guys, I think, at least I know Pewter Report, myself, we expected these guys to be out the door, signing somewhere else. Go get your money. Can't hate on that. But they both end up back with Tampa Bay for less money than I think both of us expected. That's why, for me, Zach, looking at this defense specifically, but the team as a whole, and there's a lot more changes on the offense that we'll get into, when you bring back these core players on defense, it's difficult for me to sit here and say, oh, the Bucs are going to be terrible this year or they're going to tank, because you're sending mixed messages if you're bringing back core defensive guys for a very, very reasonable price. But at the same time, you're preparing for 2024. No, I don't look at it that way.
No, I think partially too, like, teams can be bad without trying to be, right? So regardless of what does or doesn't happen this upcoming season, the Bucs, in my opinion, did as well as you could have in terms of their free agent signings, the guys that they brought back, even the draft, the way it fell to them at 19 in the first round and then beyond. I really do credit the front office and obviously Todd Bowles and his involvement as well, but specifically Jason Light in that front office for making the most out of a very stretched thin team, and just knowing Tom Brady's going to be walking away. That era is done. I'm not as shocked that they found a way to bring Levante back, because it was a 1-year deal, right? Like, it's a sweetheart hometown type of discount like that. I actually, even though I was surprised to see him come back, I could wrap my head around that. The Jamel Dean signing still, and it's tough because I love Dean. I love the fact that the Bucs were able to bring him back. I cannot figure out why he took such a discount. I mean, you're talking about a guy that could have went out and made a significant chunk more of money every single year for the next 4 to 6 years, depending on the deal he would have gotten elsewhere. He would have been a CB1 versus the 2, which he is here behind Carlton Davis. And again, great for the Bucs. He's still making a ton of money, so I'm not like sad for him, but well below market value. I mean, I got to go back and look at the numbers, but I think where he was projected was like 17 to 18. He ended up getting like 13 roughly a year.
Right.
Obviously, not including incentives and a bunch of other things, but flat looking at it. I mean, you're talking about like a $4 to $5 million difference per year that he gave up to stick in Tampa Bay. I mean, that's just mind blowing to me. And it is ironic because remember, we thought there might have been a rift in the postseason where he didn't really play much against Dallas. Yeah. Obviously, we know that was more injury riddled than anything. And he said Todd Bowles was like a father figure to him. We actually had him on air the day after he re-signed. And just the whole thing basically surrounding Jamel Dean and him returning well below market value. it's tough because obviously I credit the front office. I'm happy for the Bucs. And again, he's still making a ton of money, but I just can't put reason or logic into him taking such a massive discount to stick in Tampa Bay. It defies logic and reason, to be honest.
It really does, because you look at today's business, and obviously with Devin White and that whole situation that's going on, all you hear all the time is the NFL's a business. It's a business. A player gets cut. Well, that's just the nature of the game. That's how we look at it. And so I think it is odd at times, but just from talking to Jamel during the season in the locker room and in general, he's a guy that knows what he wants. And he's a great teammate. He gets along well with everybody. Obviously, the secondary has brought together the whole grave digger mantra. And you have to have an ego to play in the NFL, but he doesn't have an ego. And when I say that, in terms of, he doesn't have an ego that's like detrimental to the team in any way. So I think for Jamel personally, for him, it's just all about having a peace of mind. Yes, he could go somewhere else and be the number one guy, get paid millions and millions of dollars. And you're right, Zach. I mean, he was on every list, NFL.com, Pro Football Focus has like not just the top corner available, one of the top free agents available. So he could have went somewhere else, but he kept that poker face. I remember Jason Light was saying that he ran into Jamel Dean, I think at Eulalie, like a couple of days before he signed that contract, and like didn't stonewall him by any means, but was essentially not saying like, oh, I'm going to resign. But I think Jamel, being a Florida guy, being in this community for quite a while, sometimes a peace of mind more than anything else is what a player wants. You don't see it all the time, but I think that's the case for Jamel Dean. And then to your point about Lavonte David, man, it would have been tough to see him go out the door. It is, I actually did want to bring up as well, the Bucs did the same thing 2 years in a row with, Carlton Davis, the offseason before. Everyone was livid that they didn't give him the franchise tag. It ended up going to Chris Godwin. It's like, how could you not franchise tag Carlton Davis? And then they ended up getting him for a couple of million cheaper than that would have cost them if they franchise tagged him. So again, credit to Jason Light for that. But Lavonte, the sentimental value, I think obviously it was big. And then the fact that Bobby Wagner, that was the biggest thing for years, is Lavonte, Bobby Wagner. And then Wagner gets a huge contract from the Rams. The best thing that happened to the Bucs was that the Rams let go of Bobby Wagner, and then you saw other teams go, all right, well, maybe we're not going to pay him that crazy amount that he received when he first went to Los Angeles. So I think more than anything else, that is what helped the Bucs get Lavonte David back in Tampa Bay for this season. Now, that's one side of the equation with inside linebacker. The other, of course, is get live 45, Devin White, and that's probably outside of the quarterback competition, which, of course, we will get into in a little bit. But the inside linebacker situation with Devin White, I know I was on your show the other day, and we were talking about whether it would hurt the team going into this year. But as far as what Devin is asking for, he wants to be one of the highest paid inside linebackers in the league, $20 million per season. He's about to get $11 million this year. I'm curious to get what you think, but I just don't think Devin White at this moment is worth $20 million a season. That's not to say he's a bad linebacker. He's just not a $20 million a year linebacker. But curious to get your thoughts, Zach.
I also don't think he's there yet. I mean, look, there was a lot of question marks at different points in the season last year. There were some highs, right? NFC Defensive Player of the Month there at the beginning. We obviously know that at the top of his game, he is one of the best linebackers in the league just in terms of when he's on his A game. But I think that there were moments that the Bucs obviously even questioned, or that contract or some kind of deal would probably have already been done with Devin White. It's tough because you draft him to be the future. They put a C on his chest last year. He was a captain, right? Like, you want him to lead your team. And if he is a leader and he's doing a good job, and in a perfect world, you're probably going to get paid like the best at your position if you're playing like it. I just think that there's still a little bit, like, it's not a lot that he has to get situated with Tampa Bay. If he can just clean up a little bit of some of those plays in coverage, some of those effort plays where he has to keep with the guy that has the ball, even if he's 5-6 players behind him compared to the rest of the Bucs defense, like stuff like that we've found on film last year and are able to poke holes. in his game. That's us just watching leisurely. You know, the Bucs, when they're talking big money, you're also watching the same thing, Matt. So I don't think he's there yet, but I also think that he has a million opportunities, assuming he plays and everything this season, to prove he's worth that money. And I think if he does so, the Bucs will find a way to make him happy when it comes to his next deal. But he's got to get that situated, and he's got to get through some of the things that I think still have even the Bucs questioning if he's worth the highest paid contract in the league at middle linebacker. And then I think the other question, which we won't really see this year, is who is Devin White when Lavonte David's not around? And I think that might be something too that's holding back the Bucs from a front office standpoint and giving him this massive deal. Now, in terms of his teammates and what he can bring to the squad this year, I think that if he comes in and does his job and goes to work, it'll all be fine. And I think if he plays and performs at a high level, when it comes to the fans, they'll be more accepting of him. So just like winning cures all, elite play from one player cures ails as well when it comes to the perception of that guy. So he's got a lot in front of him. I just don't know how many Bucs fans, I don't know how many Bucs media members, I don't know how many people that are actually employed by the Bucs outside of the guy named Devin White would give him that type of deal right now, Matt. So he does have work to do, but I don't think it's as much work as some people were making it sound like. I do think he's been disrespected a little bit just in terms of how some of the fan base has chatted about him and his abilities. I think he's one of the best linebackers, middle linebackers in the league, but I don't necessarily think he's the top middle linebacker. Maybe I would say it's safe to say he's top 10. You're talking top 5, top 3. That's a hard group to get into.
Yeah, I would agree top 10. He's right around that range. And for Devin, I agree with you. Winning cures all. I mean, there was a time, I don't know why this one always pops into my head. It's not even Bucs related, but Albert Haynesworth back in the day, he stepped on a guy's face, with his cleat on a guy's bare face, and then had a great year and got that huge contract. Then he was terrible with Washington, but at the time he was playing great. And people just let it go that he stepped on the guy's face. If Devin plays well this year, all will be forgiven. And it is absolutely true where Bucs fans, they ride or die for their team. And that's why I think it hurt a lot of people when Devin kind of did what he did. Pretty much skipped the step of holding out of OTAs and just immediately went to I want to trade, which I thought was a little bit of an interesting move. But this is the perfect example of put your money where your mouth is. You think you deserve $20 million? All right, great. Go out and prove it. And even if the Bucs don't give it to you, another team will. Maybe the Philadelphia Eagles, because Devin loves commenting on the Eagles' Instagram for whatever reason.
Drives me nuts. That's one of the parts, Matt, by the way.
Yeah.
What are you doing, man? What are you doing? I mean, I understand social media. I get it. But why? It's so unnecessary to go on these Eagles posts and be like, oh, I look good in green or whatever. It's so unnecessary. That part bugs me. But again, look, if he comes out and he's having interceptions and multi-sack games and a crap ton of tackles and not getting beat in the pass game and coverage, people will forget about that real quick next season.
Yeah, they will. And it was a very funny scenario that everyone was in because Devin doesn't have any really arguing points or anything like that in terms of both sides were handcuffed. Devin, if he would have sat out, he still would have had to play another year. Would have been the Le'Veon Bell situation where he just accrues another year but doesn't get the money that was paid for him, and then he still has to play for Tampa Bay next season. On the flip side, the Bucs before the draft, and they ended up drafting Servassier Dennis. I don't love the depth outside of Lavonte and Devin White. So the Bucs were in a tough situation thinking, oh, man, we didn't think we were going to have to worry about inside linebacker until next season. And then even then, you might have to still replace two guys, but they did go out and get Servassier Dennis going in and out of the draft for this year. And I really like what you had to say about how Devin White looks without Lavonte David, because we don't have a huge sample size of that. But there are times more in the 2021 season where Lavonte missed some time. He had that Liz Frank injury, missed towards the end of the season, came back for the playoffs. But, I mean, no one will remember it because something else happened in that game. But when the Bucs played against the Jets, it will be remembered as the Antonio Brown game. But let's remember, the Bucs were huge favorites going into that. The Jets had no one playing on their team, and even who they had on that roster, many guys were out with injuries. And the Jets consistently ran it down the throats of the Bucs, and they would have lost that game if they didn't run a stupid QB sneak on 4th and 2. But again, that's just the Jets being the Jets.
Yeah.
But Devin White got exposed a lot in that game with Lavonte David not around. Lavonte many times has been the I don't want to say protector, but he's cleaned up a lot of the situations where Devin White would have looked bad on the play, but Lavonte was there to save the day. And, that's why Lavonte is going to be a future Bucs Ring of Honor member. But outside of that, KJ Britt, good on special teams, but I don't trust him to be a spot starter, kind of like Kevin Minter was back in 2020 and 2021 as well. But that's when his game started to slip off. That's why I'm really excited about Servassier Dennis. I'm not sure how much you know about him, Zach. I know he did play at Pitt.
Yeah.
But I'm just excited about him. I think he could be a future starter, maybe not right away, but he moves pretty well and had a nice interception in practice. But the Bucs at least took steps in the right direction to eventually figure out the linebacker situation, because I hate to say it, but one day Lavonte David will not be playing inside linebacker for the Bucs anymore. Hopefully it's just a retirement.
Is that breaking news? Are you breaking news here on Lavonte David?
I'm breaking hearts. I'm breaking everyone's hearts, unfortunately. Hopefully that day isn't for another 2 seasons from now. But the Bucs did start preparing for the future, and I'm excited about what Servassier Dennis can bring.
I think it's interesting. So they don't have a lot of depth, right? So with Dennis there, you almost assume just even if you don't have faith in him, let's just say you're not optimistic about his future as a starter in this league. It's not like there's other guys they're grooming or other guys on the roster. It's thin. So I think just by default, he's there now. If you like him, even better. Did you see, I was watching, I need to go back and watch it because I just caught it after our show today on DAE. The episode of Inside the Draft they did with Elijah Cansey and a bunch of the guys on the Bucs official YouTube channel. There's a video right before they take Elijah, and it appears that Jack Campbell, the linebacker taken by the Lions,
at Iowa,
it appears he was on the Bucs big board, and it was him or Elijah, and he went a pick earlier to Detroit, so it made the Bucs decision easier. They're hoping one of those 2 guys would be there as they got closer. And Detroit took Jack Campbell, but I have to go back and specifically watch that clip again because I was just kind of going through social media on it.
Yeah.
But the fact that according to that video, it appears he might have been the pick at 19. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means the Bucs aren't committed to Devin White beyond this year, or if they're just thinking, okay, well, we're going to need to pair Devin White with somebody else who's really good. So if we can get him there, or if it's just a little bit of both, right? We hope to keep Devin with him, but if we don't, at least we have one guy that we can trust in the middle moving forward. I would be interested. And I haven't really talked about this yet. Like I said, we got it at the end of our show. This is the first time I'm breaking it down and riffing off about it. I'm interested to hear your thoughts, Matt. That info on Jack Campbell, what does that mean the perception is about this middle linebacker position? And that's not to take away from Dennis and what he brings to the team or could, you know what I'm saying? Because that's the reality. He's the other guy in the mix now on the roster. But I wonder what it says about that position group in general that Jason Light and his team would have potentially, let's say Elijah Cansey went to Detroit. It appears that the Bucs would have drafted Jack Campbell in that scenario. I don't know what that means about Devin White and the crew.
Yeah, I mean, everything they've said to us, really, whether it's up at the podium or a lectern, as I've learned. I've been calling it a podium for years, but allegedly it's a lectern.
Well, you pound the podium. What do you do with that? What's the you lambast the? I don't know.
Yeah. All I can think of is lick the lectern, but no one would really do that if you're looking for alliteration. But nonetheless, Jason Light said we fully expect Devin White to be there. Todd Bolsa said the same thing. The best was Larry Foote just being it's champagne problems. That's essentially what it comes down to. What is funny, too, is Jason Light had been on record saying, this isn't really a good inside linebackers class. But with that said, there are still a couple of good prospects in every class, even if it's not an overall great depth at that position.
For sure.
And I do think it's a little bit of an insurance policy, but also just straight up the fact that you have to replace Lavonte at some point. And if the Devin thing flares up even after this season, you have to find his replacement. Now, they could go through free agency as well, next season. It's not like they just have to build through the draft and that's it. We saw some other great free agent signings by the Bucs finding that value. Greg Gaines at defensive tackle. Ryan Neal, at safety, obviously played for the Seahawks. I think the Bucs are going to try to find with Ryan Neal what they got from Shaq Barrett when they first signed him from Denver, a guy that was behind other talented players at the same position. Now he's going to get a full opportunity to be a starter. And Neal did get to start with the Seahawks last year, but that was out of necessity with injury. It's interesting to see how this Bucs defense is really shaping up with some of the free agent signings that they are making. It's very exciting. We talked about Devin White. His mantra is get live 45. That's how he pumps himself up. That's how he gets energized. I know on the Pewter Report podcast, we get energized with Celsius energy drinks. Of course, the official sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. We love Celsius for a variety of reasons. I mean, they have so many different flavors. It's like they have new flavors coming out every single day. One of their newest ones is the Oasis Vibe. Can't go wrong with the sparkling lemon lime or the classic orange as well. They got a creamsicle one too. My personal favorite is Arctic Vibe. And of course, you got the strawberry lemonade is one of my favorites as well. Zero sugar, no crash or jitters that you get from other products out there. So if you want to know where to find a Celsius energy drink, go to the store locator on the Celsius website, punch in your location, and it will give you the most accurate, the most direct location where you can find one at your local Walmart, Target, 7-Eleven, your convenience store, or your bodega, as I like to say. So after you go to your bodega and you realize you love Celsius and you want more, that's great. Go over to Amazon, go online to Amazon, click on the subscribe and save, and start getting Celsius in bulk because there's so many great flavors. Why limit yourself to one? Get the variety pack because variety is the spice of life. And you can have it sent to your house or apartment every week, monthly, quarterly, yearly, whenever you want it. Set it up to what fits for you best. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. Before we start talking about the offense, Zach, just curious what you're looking for the defense this year, or any player or position more specifically you plan on watching, because it's still the core nucleus. Some new guys like Ryan Neal I was just talking about, but any improvements you want to see or players that you're going to be watching?
Well, first of all, Arctic Blast is the blue raspberry one, right? I've been smashing those lately when it comes to Celsius.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Love hearing that. There's the Arctic Vibe, and then there's also there's the blueberry pomegranate as well. They're very similar tastes with like the blueberry in general.
Okay, yeah, there's one that maybe it's. I know the Arctic Blast one sounded familiar because I'm pretty sure that's the one I've been getting lately. So you sparked my my attention there. I was like, okay, that feels right.
Nice.
When it comes to the Bucs defense, man, I mean, for me, it's the pass rush, right? Like, God bless Shaq Barrett and all the things that like his family's going through, coming off of a major injury. I just think he's clearly the best pass rusher on the team. But when it comes to a football conversation, emotionally and physically, bro, there's no way to know what he's going to be like come week one, come 100%. Training camp. And again, I think this is the one time where even the most diehard Bucs fan can be like, that's fine. Like, let him, whatever he's got to do. Like, even though it's a ways away now, the fall and that, like, that's not necessarily something that I think Bucs fans are going to be critical of Shaq Barrett and his return early on. But he's the best pass rusher. So let's just say that him as a mystery right now for multiple reasons. So we're relying on who to be the pass rusher that really puts pressure on opposing offensive lines and quarterbacks. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, like, it's so tough for me to buy into JTS, and not that he can't be a good player, but a game wrecker, a game changer, a guy that's going to get double-digit sacks. I mean, and the thing is he does find himself in the backfield a lot, but if he's over-pursuing and he's behind the plays that are way in front of him happening because he just ran past the quarterback or he ran past a running back on a handoff, like, it doesn't really help the team. So I think it like has to be him, and that's a scary proposition. But I would love to see him take the next step as a pass rusher and be able to really do some things. I remember, Matt, I had as much stock in Noah Spence as anybody in Tampa Bay. And I was vulnerable. So I'm being very wary about JTS here as we move into another season.
First of all, I was saying on yesterday's show, I agree with everything you said about Shaq. I mean, obviously it's a heartbreaking situation. I can't even put myself in the shoes of what he's going through right now. and you add that on top of the Achilles injury, I have no idea what to gauge or what to expect from Shaq Barrett this year. It's just way too difficult. And of course, like I want him to have a bounce back, slam dunk type of year, because if anyone should, it should be him for what he went through. For Joe Tryanchenko, very much the jury is out on him. He is the definition of close but no cigar. What I will say for him, and Pewter Report's Josh Capo is the one banging the table or lambasting the lectern for Joe Tryanchenko. Anthony Nelson led the team, the outside linebackers, I should say, in sacks last year with 5.5. JTS had 4. But some of Anthony Nelson's sacks were just the product of the offensive lineman just completely whiffed on the block or went in the wrong direction, and he was square in the backfield like it's no issue. Joe Tryanchenko actually led the Bucs in quarterback hits and quarterback pressures. He had 16 quarterback hits last year. So he got there more than any other outside linebacker. The next closest was actually a 3-way tie between Carl Nassib, Anthony Nelson, and Shaq Barrett, all with 6. So we're talking about JTS just doubling up on them and even a little bit more. I do find interesting as well, and this is apples to oranges, but we say sometimes with quarterbacks on bad teams, and the Bucs haven't been a bad team, but quarterbacks that go through so many different coaches and offensive coordinators, it could screw with their head. You got to learn a new offense every single year. So this isn't exactly the same by any means. But JTS has had a different outside linebackers coach every single year that he's been in the league. And this year, he gets to work with George Edwards, which I think is really interesting because Edwards worked with Micah Parsons. And obviously, when you have a crazy talent like Parsons, I don't know how much coaching you can really do. He's just a freak athlete and an exceptional player. But if there's anything that he can bring from Parsons and share that wisdom to Joe Tryanchenko, that's going to go a long way with him. This is a big year for him, no doubt, because it's kind of put up or shut up time with JTS. I mean, he was my breakout player last year, and obviously did not come to fruition. I mean, he's got the size, the speed. He's built like the Hulk, and it just hasn't fully been there yet. And now with Yaya Diaby in the building and Anthony Nelson obviously getting that contract, I don't think the Bucs are going to sit idly by and just let JTS continue to be close but no cigar. He's got to put up some more numbers this year without question. Want to say shout out to everybody watching the show right now. The Pewter people got some great comments. I've been putting some up. We also got a super chat from UK Prince. Thank you very much, UK Prince, for the $9.99 super chat. You actually got 2 comments here. We'll answer them both. If you super chat us, we make sure we get to it right away. First, he was talking about Devin White. He said, I think Devin is sponsored by Jumpman. All the Jordan fits going to his head, LOL. Devin White actually has the same birthday as Michael Jordan, so there is a little bit of a tie-in there. But yeah, a lot of his Insta stories and Insta posts are about it's either riding horses or Jordan shoes. So,
well, here's the thing though: if he's sponsored by Jordan, he's getting all that gear for free. The money's for the horses. That's for the stables. He doesn't need it for the new Air Force ones that are coming out or whatever. You know what I'm saying? He's taken care of when it comes to the Jordan brand.
That is true. The other question by UK Prince, talking about the offense now. Do you guys believe that Syracuse running back will start by midseason? You're talking about Sean Tucker, the undrafted free agent, of course, out of Syracuse, as you just alluded to. I'm a big fan of Sean Tucker. The only reason he didn't get drafted is because he had that heart condition, and unfortunately, he obviously has to deal with that. But signs are pointing to that he's going to be fully ready by training camp when it gets going, or at least at some point in training camp. Do I think he's going to be the starter? No. They got a guy named Rashad White, who I think is due to have a great season now that he's the full-time starter. It's his room. Crazy to say that because he's only in year 2, but it is Rashad White's room. He should be RB1. He's too humble to say it himself. But with the new dedication to the run game that Dave Canales is going to implement, I think between the offensive line just absolutely beefing up, Matt Filer at left guard, Tristan Wirfs moving to left tackle, the dedication to running the ball, the creativity in running the ball. We're not going to see all these first down runs. The Bucs are going to throw it on first down to set up the run on second down. I think Rashad White's going to have a big year. I do think Sean Tucker can compete to not only just make this roster, but maybe get all the way up to RB2. But of course, a lot of this run game implementation is going to start with their new offensive coordinator, Dave Canales. So Zach, just curious what your thoughts are about the signing in general when it first got made, and then your impressions of Dave Canales just in the couple of times that the media has gotten to speak to him, and what the plans are for Tampa Bay.
Refreshing. Byron was just a broken record, and it wasn't a good sound that we were hearing week to week. Just so frustrating to kind of try to pick his brain and have conversations with him, and hear others try to have conversations with him. I'm pretty sure him and JC Allen are far from best friends after some of the chats they had last year over there in some of those media scrums. But I love the energy Dave Canales brings. I think the way he's approaching the offensive coordinator role is going to be something that it really resonates with a lot of these players. And it's so funny. I was talking about this today. I think one of the things that'll really benefit the Bucs this year to have success versus be a bottom feeder is embracing that confidence and that swagger, which similarly is kind of what Baker Mayfield is known for. And I know we're going to get to the quarterbacks, but I get that same kind of vibe from a guy like Dave Canales. Now, it's more calm, cool, and collected with him. He's almost like soft-spoken in the way he talks about things, but you can tell the guy's full of confidence. You can tell the guy believes in what he's doing and what he's preaching, and I think that goes a long way with players. The one thing I'll say about him is being a first-time play caller is no walk in the park. And I think if you want to talk about a learning curve the first, month of the season, nobody's going to feel that more than a guy like Dave Canales. I heard some of the questions y'all had for him the other day to start these the rookie training practices and stuff about the playbook. And he's like, yeah, we're still at the core part. We're trying to, he's got a long way to go to getting the playbook done, to calling the plays. And calling plays is one of those things, Matt, you're only going to get better through experience. So I think we have to be mindful of that. I do think he's going to have these guys ready. I think they're going to look good in training camp. I like the approach. I like the mindset of balancing it out. It seems like all of his assistant coaches and the other people in the building love the fact that he's going to try to run the ball more than Byron did. That's a pretty common thing that I think we're getting from some of the answers of other coaches and people in the organization based on his approach to balancing it out a little bit more on offense. I hope everybody's patient with him, because I think we're going to have to be, especially again early on as he tries to adjust to being the play caller. It's a tough thing.
Yeah, I try to preach this to fans and people that watch the show or just watch the NFL in general. People hate the word patience in the NFL, whether it's a coach that struggles, a GM that maybe whiffed on a pick, or a player that takes a little time to develop. People want instant gratification. And I get it. That's kind of the world that we live in today. You want instant gratification. And whether it's someone like Logan Hall last year or Luke Edeke as well, that, they didn't come out firing out of the gate by any means, and people are ready to move on from these guys already. It's like, let's settle down a little bit. You got to plant the seeds. You got to give them a little more time to develop. Because when you see what happened is Bucs fans in general, I love them. Bucs fans got spoiled with Tristan Wirfs and Antoine Winfield Jr. in 2020, just immediately dominating the scene. That just doesn't happen all the time. And credit to Jason Light for making those moves. So with Dave Canales, I totally hear you, first-time play caller. He did address that, saying that he called a ton of plays like in Seahawks practice. He was able to do it.
It's not the same.
Exactly.
It's not even close.
I'm completely with you with the preseason too, but once those lights come on, and I know he's been great at adjustments. He talked about a great adjustment that the Seahawks made. Until you're actually in the thick of it, in a game where you're judged by wins or losses, there's definitely going to be that adjustment period. But with that said, everything about his attitude, we've called him the human Celsius on this show because he is so energetic. He's so into everything that goes on. I think that's really going to brush off on the players. And I think just having a breath of fresh air with the new coach, with the new mindset in there, regardless if it was Canales or anybody else, last year was just frustrating, man.
Agreed.
It was absolutely frustrating. The predictability on offense. So just getting anything in there is going to be a big difference. Then, of course, one of the selling points on Dave Canales is the fact of who he worked with in Seattle last year with Geno Smith, turning him into a Pro Bowl quarterback. And, of course, the Bucs have a quarterback competition on their hands with Baker Mayfield and the former Florida Gator, Kyle Trask. So, Zach, just curious to get your opinion, how you look at this competition. And, of course, you being a former Florida Gator, just your opinion of Kyle Trask, if he could get the job done this year, if he does win that role.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's tough, right? Because it's tough for any quarterback to transition to the NFL. I mean, the guy he's competing against, Baker Mayfield, was the number 1 overall pick, and he's on his 4th team, right? Like, I think it's very hard to gauge if a guy's college success will transfer over to the NFL on any level, especially at the quarterback position. But that being said, look, anytime Kyle's been thrown into the fire, at least in the history we have of that happening to him at any level, he's really rose to the top. So I think Kyle would surprise his doubters. Now, do I think he would play in a way that would preclude the Bucs from looking at a different quarterback in 2024 if there was a scenario where Baker and him kind of both get chances in 2023 and Kyle looks better than Baker and actually has some success? No, I don't know if I trust Kyle to look good enough, even with opportunity, which I don't even know how much of that he'll get in 2023, to keep the Bucs from going out and picking up another QB or going another route altogether in that position and in that direction in 2024. The tough part for me, Matt, and I've said this, either the Bucs have given up on Kyle a long time ago or they've mismanaged him egregiously. I don't think that they gave up on him because he's literally splitting reps with Baker Mayfield. If they'd given up on him, it wouldn't be 50-50. That'd be a waste and it'd be detrimental to Baker Mayfield, right? That being said, I think they've just completely mismanaged Kyle Trask the entire time. I think he should have played more against Atlanta. I will continually go back to that and just be like, I understand the idea of Blaine Gabbert as the backup, but in that scenario against the Falcons, should have been a lot more time for Kyle Trask in that game. And I think even Dave Canales in his presser, the more recent one that he's had, he had referenced, like, I wish we had more tape on Kyle. But the way he said it, the tone that he had was like, they could have had more tape on him, but they chose not to find out more about him. So I think it's just been a really bad mismanagement of Kyle Trask. And that's going to happen when you have Tom Brady in town and you're trying to win Super Bowls, because the goal is not to have a young guy growing behind Brady. The goal is to try to win Super Bowls, right? And sometimes those things align in one, season or at the same moment. It just didn't work out that way for Trask and for Brady, with Gabbert kind of being mixed in and in the middle. And it just makes me wonder, though, like, what was the plan when they drafted Kyle? Because if you bring in Trask and you think, okay, he could be the guy, well, by all accounts through last season, it was hard to believe Brady was going to come back. I think even the Bucs in their heart of hearts had to think there were moments where maybe Brady was going to retire midseason with all the craziness and tough things he was dealing with in his personal life behind the scenes, right? So for Kyle to just be so minimized, again, either it was gross mismanagement or they just really don't believe in the kid at all. But it's tough for me to think that that's the case, because there'd be no point splitting his reps 50-50 with Baker then if that were the case. And that's what they're doing right now. And that's what they've said. Apparently, they plan to do all the way through training camp and preseason and basically up until they start prep for week 1 on a trip to Minnesota to start the regular season. So I just feel like it's been a gross mismanagement of Kyle Trask as a draft prospect, and it's really put him behind the 8 ball in an already tough situation of being a starting quarterback in the NFL. And then you bring in a guy like Baker Mayfield, who I think he's probably grown as a person and as a player. And look, I'll be honest, I like Baker Mayfield. I liked him when he was coming out of the draft from Oklahoma. I thought I thought he got a bad rap in Cleveland. If they weren't able to get to Deshaun, who knows what he would have done last season there. And I know it didn't work out in Carolina, but I don't know. Anyways, I'm not as down on Baker as many were after the Cleveland situation. But I do think that if you're a guy like Kyle Trask, Baker Mayfield's not the type of quarterback that comes in and makes you think, yeah, the Bucs are really believing in both of us. Like, he's the type of quarterback, in my opinion, you bring in. And if you're Kyle Trask, you're like, crap, like, this is the guy they want to start, not this is the guy they want me to compete with.
It absolutely made no sense why Kyle Trask didn't play more in that game against Atlanta. Because, like, everyone else was getting more opportunities. Luke Edeghi got moved to right tackle. What was putting Blaine Gabbert in the game? And we all love Blaine Gabbert, local hero. Congrats on going to Kansas City. There was no point of putting him in the game. When you have a quarterback that's never played in the NFL before, and you get a chance to at least see a little bit more of him outside of, 9 passing attempts, it does make you think either like maybe that's why they clean so much house on the offensive side of the ball. Thad Lewis moves to quarterbacks coach. Like maybe they didn't like the way that Trask was really developing behind the scenes. It is a bit odd to see a quarterback that was third string a year ago automatically jump up, and now he's competing for QB1. You don't see that every single day.
Well, Matt, let's play out the hypotheticals, because this is what we do,
Sure.
right? So, like, let's say Trask, let's just say he plays almost the entire game against Atlanta. Let's say he looks really good. We're still probably in the same situation here, but we understand the split with Baker, right? The 50-50. And we actually believe maybe Kyle can win the job, but the situation's the same. So worst case scenario, or I should say best case scenario for Kyle, he's in as much of a competition as he is now. But the best case for the Bucs, maybe there's a scenario where Kyle just looks awful, and they're like, yeah, we're not splitting 50-50 reps with him after what we saw against Atlanta from Kyle Trask. And maybe you're giving this year's team a better opportunity to be successful through their preparation for the season with Baker Mayfield in town. I just think that you're learning something good either way, and it wouldn't have hurt the team. And listen, they got blasted by Dallas anyways, and Blaine Gabbert didn't play in that game. So hindsight is 20/20, but like we know that it was pointless now for him to not play in that game, and it hurts the Bucs not only not really last season, but it's hurting them this season not having him play more in that game.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like you have a chance to see what you can get out of this guy working with some of the better players, and they didn't go for it. And Baker should have never played with that torn rotator cuff, that shoulder injury. But that kind of just speaks to the gamer that he is. So the big question with Baker really is, are you going to get the Baker that led the Browns to the playoffs and they smoked the Steelers, or the Baker from Carolina till LA? Obviously, he had that great moment in LA, but obviously last season was not ideal for Baker Mayfield. Just give me a prediction. How do you see the QB competition playing out?
I don't know a world where Baker doesn't win the starting job, because I think it's plausible. I do see scenarios where Trask outperforms Baker, like slightly, right? Like not in a way where you're like, okay, well, because I know they're charting every pass, every interception. Like they're going to have these guys on a Microsoft grid that is a mile long in terms of what they did all off season, all training camp, all preseason. And even if we're in a world where like Trask ultimately has the better numbers, I think it'll be close. And I think they'll go with the veteran. They'll go with Baker Mayfield in that scenario. And that's best case again for Trask. Other scenarios show Baker kind of balling out and just winning it outright. And then I really view whether it's Baker or Trask, and I do think it'll be Baker, that first month as a tryout because the bye week's in week 5. And if you're going to flip to a guy, week 6 would make the most sense to still try to win your season and be a playoff team.
Yeah, I hate the bye week where it is in general.
Same.
If you wanted to spin it, you could say, well, the new offense, Dave Canales, everyone's kind of learning it.
Yeah.
You can go those first 4 games and then kind of reset the mode and everything with, okay, this is what we did well in the first 4 weeks. This is what we need to work on. Mm-hmm. If anything, it's better to have like that whole group powwow early in the season than later in the year. Now, in years past, the Bucs have really benefited from having a later bye week, most notably when they went on that win streak during the Super Bowl season when they won. But whether it's Trask or Baker Mayfield, we'll all be paying attention to it, because whoever wins that job, that may change on how I bet for the Bucs on their over-unders this season. Of course, if you're going to be betting, go ahead and do it at mybookie.ag. We've all been there before. A weekend trip to the casino canceled because real life came calling. Well, you're in luck, because MyBookie's new and improved online casino is here to change the game. Dive into a truly realistic casino experience featuring the latest in slots, progressive jackpots, and live dealer action, all from the comfort of your own home. Take advantage of weekly blackjack tournaments and a brand new collection of high-end games for a chance at real cash rewards. The MyBookie Casino provides a Las Vegas experience when the action's in your hands. And the best part is you don't even need to wear pants. Your adventure at the MyBookie Casino begins today with a generous sign-up bonus using the promo code Pewter, P-E-W-T-E-R. One more time, that's promo code Pewter to secure yourself a sweet deposit bonus. And that's not all, because their revamped loyalty program ensures that you'll be showered with rewards, including free spins, cashback offers, and a host of exclusive VIP perks. The more you play, the more you win. Play anytime, anywhere with MyBookie Casino. And of course, mybookie.ag. If you use that promo code Pewter, get up to $1,000 with your first deposit bonus. That's promo code Pewter, Pewter. All right, Zach, as we wrap things up real quick, the schedule came out recently. I'll throw it up on the screen for everybody to see if you're not exactly familiar with the schedule coming up. But for me, starting out, there are a lot of teams that love running the ball, and that's where the Bucs took a step back last season, I would say. And then I do feel that in the middle of the season, kind of right after the Buffalo game where you play the Texans and the Titans, the Colts, Panthers, Falcons, right towards the middle to late November, I think that's a great opportunity for the Bucs to go on a bit of a run once everyone understands the offense, the team is gelling together. That's where you could see more wins for this team. How do you see it for the Bucs with their schedule? They're over under 6.5 wins. You taking the over or the under?
So I think the Bucs are perhaps the team with the largest window of what could go wrong or could go right.
Agreed.
Now, us being in Tampa Bay, obviously, I think we're a little biased in that regard. Like, I'm sure other cities feel that way as well. But I truly do, looking across the league, see the Bucs and think, well, they could win, 9 or 10 games. They could win 4 or 5 games. So, it's tough, man. It's really tough to believe the Bucs are going to have a really successful year. I had them at 7 wins. I think that's realistic. So I guess if 6.5 is the over-under, I have them over by a half a game. But again, I just think it's such a drastic window of what they could or couldn't do. And really, whoever wins that starting job, it'll be interesting because even if Kyle has, a good run at it, I don't think he's going to go out in week 1 and win on the road in Minnesota. But I could see Baker doing that, just willing the team, a young play caller that's never gotten experience in Dave Canales really at the position yet. Like, I could see Baker and them coming out and winning that first week. And then, the Bears, that's out of those 4 first games, a winnable game. I don't know what world they beat Philly, but the NFL is crazy. And then similarly, you go to New Orleans to wrap it up. Like, I think best case scenario, they go to the bye 2-2. And then it's just a matter of like, you feel good about having the Lions after a bye week, any team after the bye week. And I think the Lions are going to be a lot better, but I'm not necessarily riding their hype drain into the Super Bowl parade yet like some are. The fact that they're on opening night is insane to me as a non-playoff team, but I digress. I think it's tough, for the Bucs this year because in years past, I've looked at the schedule and I said, when you're a good team, it's not about who you play. It's about other teams being like, oh, we got to play the Bucs, or we got to play Team X. But obviously, in this case, it's the Bucs. The Bucs are not a good enough team this year where I do that. It's the other way around. I'm like, the Bucs have to play Philly. The Bucs, they have to go play the Bills. Like some of these other first place teams that we saw last year, and the Bucs were a first place team, so they play that schedule. Man, it's tough because at 8-10, if you count the playoff loss, it sucks that they have to leave the Brady era on a loss like that and still play a first place schedule.
I know.
It feels a little unfair. But because I would have loved to see this team play like a second or third place schedule and really been like, yeah, you know what? I could see them comfortably winning like 9 games or more. But because of that schedule, because of their moving on from Brady and a brand new play caller in Dave Canales, it just really gets tough for me to pick more than 7 wins. Like I feel like I'm not even confident at 7. I think somewhere between 5 and 8. But again, it's a big window. So I'd go 7 here. One of the things that we benefit from, Matt, is the ability to go see them, obviously leading up to training camp, but specifically in training camp and really see how these guys mesh. And I mean, just is like every year, if we get out there and Baker's slinging it and we're watching some bombs, like the excitement's going to go up. We're going to start to believe that win total will go up. But right now, with just knowing everything we know on paper, I got questions about the pass rush. I got questions about the depth at middle linebacker. I got questions about, on the offensive side, the offensive line. I like the O-line, but who's in their natural position from last year? Ryan Jensen, who didn't even play last season because he was hurt. So offensive line is a complete rebuild in that regard. I like Rachaad White, and I'm assuming he's going to ball out this year, but we've never seen him as the workhorse. So it's just really tough because a lot of the things that make us feel good we're projecting. Feel great about the two cornerbacks. I like the safeties, obviously. I think Winfield Jr., we're going to look back on his career and be like, remember when they tried him a little bit in corner, that final Brady's? Yeah, right? Like, that's going to be such a funny thing for us to look back on in his career. But I think he's going to be just solidified there, playing his natural position. But I just feel like there's a lot more question marks or uncertainties. So it's really tough at this moment to pick the Bucs to win more than 7.
It's definitely not as easy going this season by any means. I do feel, though, if the Bucs can, after that Bills game, if they're at 3-4 or 4-3, I think they're set up to be in an okay situation where, they play a really bad. What do they play? They play a really bad AFC South and a not too daunting NFC North. Like, if the Vikings are the best team in that division in the NFC North, there are very winnable games on the schedule for the Bucs. And then obviously playing in the NFC South, if they can sweep either Carolina or Atlanta and at least split with everyone else in the division, I can see the Bucs getting to really their same record as last year at 8-9, or maybe even go 9-8 this year. And that's maybe a little bit more towards the optimistic side. But hey, you don't know until they actually start playing. I think it was Trevor Lawrence the other day said, paper doesn't mean anything. You got to go out and prove it, or whatever it was, because he was mad about the QB rankings. But definitely not mad that you were on the show today, Zach. Can't thank you enough for joining us. Just let everybody know again where they can find you on social media, and you want to plug your show on WDAE.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Matt. Always a pleasure to talk to you, man, and love what you guys do at Pewter Report. Obviously, the whole staff. Scott knows over the years I've always said that he knows how to put a good team together, and it's no different right now with you and everybody over there. At Zac on the mic, easiest way to follow me across all social. I'm on everything from Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, even TikTok these days. I'm talking. So
nice.
At Zac on the mic, and then you can catch me and Jay Retcher, J&Z every Monday through Friday from 12 noon to 3 o'clock on 95.3 WDAE, the iHeartRadio app, 6:20 a.m. And yeah, man, that's just the way to catch me. But, I think similar to you, the one thing I always tell people, 24/7, 365 on Twitter, at Zac on the mic, I'll be out there. So if you have any thoughts or anything, you can always find me that way. And hopefully, man, we're talking about, a lot more positives with this Bucs team as we start to see them, in OTAs and then more specifically in training camp.
Absolutely. Make sure you follow Zach on his social media. And then after you're done following Zach and checking out the J&Z show, head on over to pewterreport.com and please follow us on our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We are at Pewter Report. And then our YouTube channel, of course, is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe if you are watching the show. We always got a lot of content coming out, but that's going to do it for us on tonight's show. For Zac Blobner, I'm Matt Matera saying thank you, everybody, for watching. And we will see you tomorrow night for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.